Hello, watch lovers. I would like to show you a little bit of my collection here and talk to you about some sizes in watches. We're going to go from 36 millimeter to 40 millimeter. I have a 38.5 millimeter. I have a Rolex Explorer 1, Monta Noble in blue, a Grand Seiko SBGA 415. That's the winter edition, spring drive, and a goes without saying, Maxi Rolex Submariner date. And I just want to talk about my experience with these watches, see if it pertains to you, show them to you on my 7-inch wrist. As you can see, I have a pretty flat, broad wrist, 7 inches. That does mean though that my wrist isn't necessarily like, I don't have a lot of extra skin. I'm pretty thin skinned. Pun intended too. So no negative comments if you can help it. No, feel free, bombard me. Let me know how it goes for you. But I'll try these on and I'll show them to you on my wrist and tell you what I'm really enjoying and see if I can help you make some decisions. So I'm just gonna wind and set this guy here and talk to you a little bit about my experiences. So got this Monta a few months back, and it actually helped me decide to make my purchase of the Rolex Explorer 1. And I'll tell you a little bit about why. Mostly it comes down to size. And in my opinion, size is all over the place, and size can be as big as you want right now or as small as you want. Really, we have a complete mixed market. I think there's a lot of people out there saying, oh, big watches are still in, go big, get a sports watch. Obviously, Rolex moving up to 41, Patek releasing the 5811 in gold. Obviously, signals in 41 signals that they're going big too. So yeah, it's a big market right now, and sports watches are definitely still big. And that's fine. I think that, I've rocked a Panerai 47 on my 7-inch wrist, and it was large, but you know what? It worked, and some people were really excited about it that I showed it to. And I've rocked the 44 Panerai before, and the 371 or 372? It was a really cool watch. I mean, just classic Panerai. This Monta is 38 and a half, and I think it gets a lot of things right. I really like the smooth, this full polished sort of, brushed set. There's very few surfaces, but a few that just pop out here that are polished, and the surround being polished is really nice and does add a bit of elegance to this. And by far the most striking thing is the blue dial. And honestly, when people see this, that's the first thing they call out. And even looking at it now, I'm just shocked by how good this watch looks. It is honestly fantastic. And the bracelet, as people talk about, has these sort of completely, they're not limited in their flexibility between the in links, so they don't depend on the next in link. So it's sort of an even distribution, which allows it to sort of flex and play here. As you can see, it can just like fold on itself. But that allows for it to be one of the most comfortable bracelets that I've ever worn, even compared to, I've tried on the AP. I have a Jubilee bracelet that's currently off of my Datejust. The Oyster bracelet's fine. It's really nice. It's by far my favorite, and this is Oyster style, but this is probably one of the nicest bracelets I've ever tried on. I have to say though, there's one thing I don't like about it that I don't know if people have talked about very much. You can see it here on my wrist, 7 inches again. Really nice, smooth, flush sort of profile. Two things I dislike about the clasp here. One is that, as you can see, it has a bit of a point to it. And when I clip this onto my wrist, I do get a bit of push down, and that push down has actually scratched one of the center links, and that was scratched when I got it from Monta. I wrote them, they said they couldn't do returns unless I had not wrapped it, but in unwrapping it, I found that it was scratched. And their return policy was still they're going to charge me $100. So I said, hey, I'll just keep it, and I'll do a review on it. But as you can see, this watch fits me very well, and I've been wearing the Explorer as my daily driver, and this does feel a little bit big. And one thing that I also know that really stands out to me in wearing this right now is that the polish on the indices is very reflective, and it almost, you know, when you blur your eyes, you see it light up under this light here. I'm getting a lot of almost like diamondy sort of glints around the periphery, but it is beautiful. Kind of reminds me of water. And with the polished crown as well, this knurled crown, the way that it sort of comes out like a pilot's watch, this is definitely it's still a sports model, obviously in steel, but it definitely has a bit of elegance too. You could easily wear this as a daily driver. I think for, you know, $1,800 or whatever they're charging for this right now. I forget what I paid for it. I think it was around 16 plus tax. You know, it's definitely one of the best for the micro market. So very happy with this piece. I do think that it's nice to have a date complication. This keeps time fairly accurately. It runs a little bit fast. This is using a Swiss SWE movement instead of the ETA movement. And I would have preferred the ETA, but they're evidently just kind of pivoting back and forth depending on what they have in stock at the moment. So really nice class. It does have this weird friction fit pin system that is actually getting a little gunky. I'm not sure if that's from my skin or, but anyhow, it's a really hard snap. And that does feel good, but it is hard to get on. Oh, the other thing I was gonna mention, I totally skipped over it, that people don't mention about this bracelet that I'll try and show you here. Hopefully I'm still on camera. See, this is a hard one. I have to pinch it right underneath there. When I'm wearing this, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to show it on camera, but sometimes with the way that I wear this bracelet, this inlink kind of pops out. Maybe you can see it from this side. And that's because there is, it kind of does one of these things where this middle link is extending out, and that's because it really doesn't have any sort of resistance to being exposed from its, the way that it's designed. And I don't think that looks the best, but it definitely feels great, and nobody's going to notice that unless that's something that I notice. And, a lot of these things are things, nuances that as a watch owner, you're wearing something day in and day out. You really want it to feel right and look right for you, and that does bug me. I also wish that there was I really love the oyster case. I suppose I'll move on to my favorite of the bunch. Man, you can just feel how light this is too. Light and solid feeling, and just, there's something about a Rolex watch, when you pick it up, that you notice that all the details have been thought out, and you're like holding a masterwork. Definitely the amount that I've spent more than this, maybe I'm holding that amount in my hands, but I can feel it. I think that I can feel it. I love everything about this watch, and if you've seen my channel, you know that this is my newest purchase, so obviously I'm very biased right now, but honestly, I think this is the perfectly designed watch, and I think the 36 millimeter compactness is correct for this dial. The busyness of the dial, it keeps it nice and refined. It's not too big where things are so spaced out there's too much negative space. I think that it's nice and compact in that way, but the numeral size, the indice size, is smaller than the newer 124 270s. This is the 114 reference, and I just feel like with the chromolite too, if I'm to turn this light off, I could just have this really nice. Let me see if I can do that for you real quick. If I turn this off, you might see the glow. Yeah, I can't do it here, but the glow is green. It's a really nice green color, and it's my favorite thing about these indices. And just white gold surrounds, there's a much less pronounced or dramatic effect of refinement, even though this 38 Monta 38.5 has a very similar case design. Was a reason that I decided to go for this was because when I was comparing, contrasting, and thinking about the differences, I really don't like this flat side, and I love the Oyster case that has that smoothed side. It almost bubbles out a bit on the sides, and I'm not a huge fan of how this crown is pronounced. Again, it seems a little bit too elegant for me, and I like how this one's more functional. I also like that when I'm winding this watch, you can hear it. That's a nice sound. It feels good. I don't feel anything with the Monta, and that really bothers me about the ETA movement. And again, this is one of those things that where as an owner, you're going to notice it over time. I like too that the sound this watch makes, if I hold it up to my ear, there's a, that 28,800 vibrations per hour is just a really nice sound. And does have that raised crystal. I've heard some people knocking that. That's one thing you got to watch out for. This is still a piece of jewelry, so obviously you can go exploring with it. But I would watch out that you don't damage that, because that can be 4 digits to fix, probably like $1,200. Or you can get a second, and they'll actually sign that. So this crystal, I learned from a video, has these Rolex crown at the bottom. They were doing that back in the 2000s. Before this one doesn't have the rehot, but which I'm not a huge fan of. I like how refined this is, and like it has sort of a vintage aesthetic quality now. But the crown, they would actually sign it with the crown, and then there would be an S in the center for serviced. So if you get your crown damaged and you need to go get it replaced by Rolex, you send it in for servicing, they do the full thing, and they'll put an S on that replaced crystal. So you're not getting, you could buy an original and just have somebody else do it, I guess, from eBay. This one still has the 114270 green sticker on it. And I like that on this model, my coronet crown, it's a coronet, points towards the 6 o'clock marker. Yeah, every Rolex is different. Some of them point at an angle. A lot of them aren't symmetrical. Mine, for some reason, points straight towards 6 o'clock, and I think that's kind of cool. I wish they all pointed north, but that's fine. I guess Z-axis. Oyster bracelet, it has solid inlinks here. It's different from the 14270, and stamped clasp. Again, I really like that this blends in. It just fits on the wrist better too. And if you want to get a comparison here, this is how it looks on my 7-inch wrist, and I think that is just the right. Like I've actually tried this watch on a watch strap, and I immediately was like, no, it's too small. But on the Oyster bracelet, integrated Oyster link bracelet, it feels perfect. And I think this is the right size. It's legible. It's pretty light. It's just over 100 grams. It's not too light. I could talk about this guy. But it's pretty light. And it just feels good. It sits well. Kind of sits right in the center there. And I just, like, you can't fault this watch. I just feel like one of the things about Rolex, so you might look at them, and I think a lot of people do this with the sub. I'll do that one next. They look at the sub and they say, man, it looks cool. Man, it looks cool. It just looks cool when I'm looking at it. I just like the way that it looks. And I do. I really like the way that this watch looks. Let me polish this off for us so you can have a look at these other watches, beautiful watches, while I get this one back in shape. But yeah, this is the 2020 model. Again, black lacquer, has the maxi dial, white gold hands, and then the Cyclops, obviously, and flat sides. This again feels like a tool watch. It's got really solid links, full solid, with the updated clasp. Mine's been through some dust diving. And it's heftier. It's definitely heftier. I slide it on my wrist here, and you can see, man, that has presence. It has a lot of presence. And then one of the things that I really don't enjoy as much about this is that on my 7-inch wrist, again, it's pretty much spanning the entire width of my wrist. And like, this is a medium-sized wrist, not overly large. I'm not an overly bulky guy, but I don't have 6-inch wrists, and so you wouldn't when you see this, it just stands out. I wanted to wear this as my wedding watch. I wasn't going to. I ended up wearing something completely different. I wore a Jaeger LeCoultre, and it was a really nice. Didn't say that right, guys. Don't make fun of me. But it really matched what I was wearing. But my wife was saying that watch just stands out so much, and I can't help but see it every time you wear it. And I agree. And there is something like as an artifact. Like when I look at this, I love the shape. I love everything that Rolex did here. I love I do love seeing the rehat. I feel like the crown profile is just with the ceramic bezel is just right. It stays really flush and it looks really beautiful against the case shape. And it has something a little bit like edgy about it, as you can see, like from the flat back of the case design. It just looks almost, the angles are just masculine. And I know that that's probably because of this maxi dial. But yeah, I think it gets a lot of things right. And again, see this crown. This is where you get like just pointed at an off angle. It bothers my OCD-ness a little bit. But I just think this is a beautiful watch. It's fun to wear. I love the monochrome aesthetic. You can wear it with anything. But the other thing, I just don't like how short this bracelet length is. I would love to see more bracelet than this giant clasp on the bottom. And that is for my flat wrist too, spans the entire breadth of my wrist almost. It just doesn't look right. I don't like looking at my watch this way and seeing how short this is. My watches tend to slide off this side. So they're always kind of like hanging off the back here. And I get this little like notch that's exposed. And that's just because like I have this, maybe I need to have some beefier arms, but that's just how it wears on my wrist. And I just like seeing that. So that's why, honestly, for the size of my wrist, and I honestly, this is the 40 millimeter. Now they've upgraded to the 41 millimeter. I'd highly recommend, if you're thinking about getting one of these watches, go into a store, try it on, see how it looks. Because what I was going to mention when I started showing this, I had this watch first. I've had other Rolexes. I had a 116610, which has the non-maxi dial and thinner lugs, and I really like that model. And I've had the no date, 2018 no date, and then I sold that, and I eventually got this one. I've just been keeping this one. And honestly, they look a bit different on your wrist, and you really have to try it out. And I thought that this one was a bit too small when I originally tried it out. Then I got a Datejust fluted bezel in the Jubilee bracelets. There's something I'd wanted for a long time. Tried it on in the store, waffled a bit, ended up getting it. Wasn't exactly what I wanted, and I ended up selling it for my wedding watch. My wedding watch was too dressy. I like everyday tool watches. That's why I have this whole set of tool watches that you're seeing here. And if you consider the spring drive a tool watch. And so I ended up saying, because I know that I like 36 millimeter, I'm going to go with the Explorer. And I also have this guy, which the clasp folds backwards compared to Rolex. So it always gets me. But, I think that this watch fits well, and it gets a lot of things right from an aesthetic point of view. The Seiko technology is something to be marveled at. Honestly, it's amazing. And this dial texture is awesome. The finishing, where you have these polished titanium in between the brushed, and it's Zaratsu polish, which is like a German manufacturing technique that there are only certain people that know how to do it now, and they use it in Japan proprietarily on Seiko, who's was banned from the Swiss watch expos. So back because they were making quartz movements that were much more accurate. Anyhow, this watch uses spring drive. Spring drive has a quartz battery in it that they use as basically a tuning fork to ensure that it stays regulated. The tuning is like, so there is essentially like a quartz crystal in this watch that's going to be controlled not by a battery, but by the gyroscopic forces, and that's going to regulate the movement, and that's essentially heat adjusted. So it's essentially always going to be within a second per month. And it does keep remarkably accurate time. For me, it's always flipped over exactly like when it says it's going to. Like I watch time.is and it's spot on. So from an atomic perspective, atomic clock perspective and accuracy perspective, this watch is just superior. It also has the 100 meters of water resistance, does all these things the other watches do. It's 40 millimeters, sits very, very nicely on my wrist. I think this is like the optimal size for my wrist, but it's still a little big. I think it's nice, but it draws a lot of attention to itself, in my perspective. And from looking at it from a distance, everything is just very gray, almost like an olive gray to this dial, and you wouldn't really know it unless you started looking at it very closely, that it has the blue and the gold. So I think that people obsess about these watches, looking at all the details online, then they get them home and they start looking at them and thinking about like all those dimensions that they saw, and then they see it in person, they kind of have to go like really close in order to start seeing the things that they saw online. And again, I can barely tell this is gold in this light unless I catch it at just the right angle, and that hand is blue. I love the details of this watch. Gray, blue, and gold are just like awesome color combination. The Zaratsu almost has like this glittery effect as I rotate my wrist here. This is supposed to be a sports watch, but obviously it could be very easily be a sports watch or a dress watch, and it would do it really effortlessly. So a lot of things about this watch I think they get right. But also I've seen some videos on this and I completely agree that this watch almost feels too perfect. And the dolphin hands, I forgot to mention the dolphin hands, just have this really nice contrast to them. And this is a really smart thing. They brush the top and then they Zaratsu polish the side, so it does have glints when you catch it at the right angle. But man, they really jump out. Does not have any lume. I'm a lume fan, come to find out. I miss the lume on this when it's nighttime. I will look at my watch sometimes in the night. It's nice to know it's by my bedside table. Nothing on this watch, so can't tell the time of the night. Also, hold this watch up to your ear. There's gonna be no sound at all. It's completely quiet. I also really don't like the amount that this crown sticks out. It looks like something that was put on like a Timex watch they just shoved on here. Like really nice GS logo, but too big. That purchase is huge. And the sound is like a zipper. I just really don't like that zzz. It just feels like you're winding something a bit cheap. It doesn't have the ticking sound on it. Honestly, the best watch that I've ever wound is a JLC. I'll just say JLC because I can't pronounce it. Jaeger LeCoultre. And it has a little bit more of that like ticking, like heavy clicking noise that you get here, but even more pronounced. I also don't like that when I wind this watch in, it keeps winding. So I'm trying to push that in, and you can still hear it winding, and I always feel like I'm over winding it because it's still winding when I'm doing that. So those kind of things bug me. But yeah, I wouldn't want to beat this watch up. I don't mind beating this up. Look how it's elegant, even though this has been completely beat up. You can see that there are marks on this watch in many different places, and I don't mind. One thing, this does get pretty smudgy. This crystal doesn't have any sort of like chemical treatment to it. No AR coating as well, but no chemical treatment that would prevent those heavy smudges. So I'm constantly trying to wipe this guy off because I do love looking at that dial. I think it's just the right symmetry for a dial. Made a few videos on why I prefer this watch over the newer Explorer, but honestly, that's sort of my thinking on the size lineup. And I really thought that I was going to be a 38.5 millimeter guy. I thought that the 40 was too big. And what I came to realize, and another watch video does this, is when you talk about how big a watch is, you need to talk about this crystal dimension. And I think that a lot of people just focus on what is the max diameter of the case. And that's only as good if you look at these two watches. The diameter of the case is about even, 38.5 and 40, but the amount of bezel that these have makes that dial feel a little bit smaller on the Grand Seiko, almost that it's even with the Monta Noble, and that causes the Noble to feel a lot larger. And I had this same effect when I tried on a 41 AP Royal Oak, and the Royal Oak wears huge. It's a huge sports watch, and I hadn't realized that until I tried it on, and I was like, wow, I would get this watch on a 37, and that's how I came back to this, because I realized the date just bezel is fluted, and it's a little bit larger, and it encroaches on the actual diameter of the dial, and it causes it to wear a lot smaller, in my opinion. There's something about that fluted bezel, it really takes away from, sorry, I gotta polish this off, from the size. And when you look at this one, because it's so austere and there's just that minimal polished bezel, it sort of stands out in a way that's proud, even for its size. And I appreciate that about this watch. It's flies under the radar. It's not trying to make too much of a statement, but when people notice it, they know what it is and they appreciate it. You'll see this on the wrist of guys like Bark and Jack, and You're Terrific. I don't know what his name is, but he's great. And I just think that this is the ultimate size for a watch, and this is the ultimate watch. And all these other ones are great for their various purposes. I also, I do have a Casio here. This one's the 47, again, lug to lug. Doesn't include these sides that won't go down. It's like a 50 something, huge watch. I was on time. I was on time with this guy. But you know, this is the size that when I'm going out and doing things, this is what I want to be wearing, because I just think it fits and it feels right to me. So thank you for watching. If you want to see more watch videos, please subscribe. I'm going to be making I'll do some deep dives on this guy, the Grand Seiko, the Monta Noble, and even the aged IP Casio. Why not? G-Shocks are great. All right, guys. Peace.